Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 50th episode of It's Your Time Now, a program dedicated to promoting the ongoing struggle for true constitutional reform by providing the public with the information necessary for constructive and honest participation in a free and fair forum. Ladies and gentlemen, a year ago when this program first started, it was our intention not only to educate the viewing public on the contents of our current constitution, but to also do so in a way that would allow you to apply that knowledge to present-day examples in order to appreciate why our country is in need of dire constitutional reform. And as we have seen time after time, one of the most basic fundamental problems is the government of the day controls the parliament and not the other way around as intended to be. That being said, if under the current system you have a parliament that cannot provide the necessary checks and balances that will hold the government accountable for its actions and or inaction, and a government that refuses to uphold and respect the supreme law of the land, what we have, in effect, is a people who are voiceless save for once every 5 years. Put simply, under our current system, there is no accountability of those running the country to the parliament or to the citizens of the country. And that is why we are seeing such a spiraling disenchantment in society with numerous protests, some peaceful, others not. Because, ladies and gentlemen, there is a general frustration amongst the citizenry that their voices are not being heard. And whilst they know and see all that is happening, they are helpless to do anything about it. One such example of that feeling of helplessness and frustration caused by the lack of transparency, accountability, truth, honesty, and the heavy hand of the state is the issue surrounding the construction of the Debe to Mondaziri section of the extension of the Solomon Hochoy Highway that will join the major highway, also known as the Point Fortin to San Fernando Highway. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot emphasize the importance of unearthing the truth in all matters that affect our country. Our country, especially when so many issues have become so infected with propaganda that it becomes lost. You see, ladies and gentlemen, it is one thing to attempt comedy, and then it is another thing to put into the public domain untruths, which may stem from a lack of knowledge of the true facts or simply wickedness. After all, we have seen the despicable ads being printed under the disguise of freedom of speech. That being said, in every dark cloud there is a silver lining, and no more so than the remarkable young people known as Project 40. Ladies and gentlemen, you will recall on October 13th, 40 members of the Highway Reroute movement, mostly young people, began a 40-day relay fast outside the office of the Prime Minister in support of not only Dr. Wayne Kablal Singh, but also in the struggle to attain accountability and transparency in government. Today, we have the pleasure of having two members of the group with us. Mohammed Muwakil, he is a singer with the band Freetown Collective, a writer, actor, and Chike Pilgrim, a writer, historian, and a teacher who has a master's in history from the University of St. Augustine. Welcome, guys. Welcome, first and foremost. Mohammed.
Thank you.
Welcome,
Thanks for
Chike. Let me first say thank you so much for being here. I'm humbled by your willingness to stand up and do something active, to stand up and be counted. And thank you so much for coming on such short notice as well. You've chosen to do something when a lot of young people have also chosen to simply sit behind a computer and sort of Facebook. Whilst that's good, you're out there actually taking a stance, and I'm so proud of you for that. Thank you so much for being here. Just to recap for the viewing audience, on Wednesday, December 5th, 2012, the first hunger strike ended. The Prime Minister appointed an independent review committee led by former Senator James Armstrong to review the Debe to Mondesir segment, which joins the Point Fortin to San Fernando Highway. And I always, ladies and gentlemen, want to reiterate, the highway route movement is not against the major highway, which is the Debe San Fernando to Point Fortin. The report was completed in 60 days and recommended to the government no further construction work be carried out on the site. But to date, the Prime Minister has refused to comply with the report that she commissioned. That is what led to the second hunger strike, and that's really where I want us to begin. You guys have picked up what you say a 40-day hunger strike. Can you explain the relay to our viewers what that is? Can you tell us, Mohammed?
First of all, it's not a hunger strike. It's a 40-day fast, and we're making that very clear. We are not taking up exactly what Dr. Kubla Singh is doing. We are taking up a fast, and that's the first thing. And we're doing it in solidarity with the Highway Reroute movement, as Chike likes to call it, a single fire. That's one of the fire among fires. But we're not intending to go around out in fires. We want to get to the source of it, which is good governance in Trinidad and Tobago. How do we find a way to govern ourselves that is mature, accountable, and transparent? You know.
Tell me something, Chike. Do you think this, what you're calling a 40-day fast? Because I see different members every day, yes. And that's just fantastic, and young people and every single person participating must be commended. What effect do you think that will have? I know what you want, because my dear friend Mohammed has just said that, but what effect do you think it will have?
I think from a personal level, it kind of moved us out of the space of not doing anything, you know, that sense of helplessness. What can I do? I read on the papers, this and that about the country, and, you know, it kind of moved us out of the space of talking about it in our private spaces to kind of making a statement in the public space. I think on the wider level, it encourages the population by seeing young people trying to do something and engaging in debate across the table.
Absolutely, because throughout the world what you're seeing, and it has happened historically, young people have been the catalysts for true change. They have been the ones that have been there, stood up. We know Tiananmen Square, we know so many things that have happened in young people. So again, I can't commend you enough. So you think by doing this 40-day relay fast, that it would sort of highlight the issue, and your main issue being obviously in solidarity with Dr. Kubla Singh, but for governance. You're talking about governance. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that, or our viewing public?
Yeah, no, as Mohammed was saying, is really the highway itself, it is a key issue, but it's representative of a wider issue of how we're approaching development. We're not approaching it from a sustainable way. With respect to consensus, how we deal with the people as a government. You know, we have Lloyd Best talking about doctor politics and the way that we hand down almost like edicts, you know,
sure.
And we don't have consensus among our people. So I think the highway represents that from a number of different levels, as well as transparency and accountability. So it brings together many things. And
of course. Now, obviously, that being said, I'd like to hear your points of view on some things that have happened. I want to put aside for a second Dr. Wayne Kubla Singh, like I said, he's risking his life to protect the well-being of others and the environment. And the Prime Minister has chosen to ignore him. Putting it aside, Transparency Institute of Trinidad and Tobago has recently written to the Prime Minister, and they are seeking clarification on the government's position relating to the Armstrong report. They've gotten no response. The JCC has written to Chairman of NIDCO, Carson Charles, since the 10th of October, no response. So that really looks like we're beating a dead dog. I myself have lost certain. We all will have faith and hope that there will be a response, but a man's life is at risk. And beyond that, the society, environment, all sorts of things are quickly deteriorating before our eyes. Now, when it comes to you guys, I've researched you, and I see on Monday, the 27th of October, your group, Project Forte, wrote to the president on the matter saying, and I loved your words, they were so to the point, and I quote part of your letter, "Excellency, the people of Trinidad and Tobago have been continuously disappointed by our leaders, made evident by the apathy and selfishness pervasive in our once relatively cohesive society. At your presidential inauguration on March 2013, you gave so many of us hope that your presidency hearkened positive change, with your assertion that there must be a willingness to be accountable and your promise to do right in all manner of people, for all manner of people, without fear or favor, affection or ill will." First question, and of course he goes on to the speech that we all know, powers that I have, I may not, power. We know this speech. Have you heard anything from the president since?
No, we haven't heard from them.
You haven't heard. And well, of course, I must ask you, and Mohammed, if you tell me, do you think you will?
No, to be quite frank. You see, I've been kind of joining back all the time to issues of, like, let's say the country, look at it as a family, you know? Mm-hmm. If there's a point at which when a man is raising a son or a woman is raising a daughter or children are being raised, where the son and the father go through a very kind of transitional period where, you know, one is now able to also give advice to the other. But if the father isn't heeding of the words of the son, or the one who is seen to be in a lower position is not heeding, you know what I mean, in that way, then what you have is this kind of imbalance where, you know, we as young people now are no longer looking at it as, you know, this is the president and it's an untouchable position and whatever. There may have been days in our country when that was true, when the country was just being formed and the populace was largely uneducated and we didn't have access to certain things. Now we know, we understand what it takes to rule a country. We know that it doesn't take some overwhelming sort of genius or whatever. It takes an ability to care on a very large scale. And we're not seeing that. We're seeing people who are claiming to be able to rule in a certain way, but not doing that. And so it is unacceptable that people our age should send a letter to the highest office of the land asking not just for mediation in this matter, but for clarification on how come the country that you are going to leave us, the country that we are going to inherit, is being run in this way, and you're so silent about it. You're playing with my inheritance, and I'm happy about that. And I don't think any of us are happy about that.
Absolutely. Chike?
Well, even Professor George Maxwell Richards, the former president, I was reading an article he had written, and he was saying that, you know, the view is that the president is a kind of, the general view of the population is that the president is a creation of the ruling party. And, you know, therefore cannot make any statements that is, you know, opposed to them, you know. And he's saying, therefore, that the negative fallout of that is so huge that you have this statesperson, and the country isn't really invested in his position. They don't feel that he has any powers whatsoever. And we're giving him an opportunity to say, okay, invite people into a wider debate, you know, not make any commands that he's not in a position to do, but make an invitation and address the young people of the nation.
You see, Chike, I think that statement that was made by Professor Maxwell perhaps came from a political creature. It's because how the president is actually elected under the current constitution,
right.
And that is by majority of members of the ruling party. Of course,
yes.
that's the first thing. Of course, we then have the problem that a lot of people feel that the position is very ceremonial.
Right.
Okay, but we know different because, as you know, Section 80 of the Constitution says, and I think it's very important for the viewing public to know, because you must have known this before you wrote, because, like I said, he has powers that we know he has. Yeah. That's a better way to put it. It says that the president must act in accordance with the advice of the cabinet, except where he is required to act in his discretion, after consultations with any person or authority for example, your good self, without the cabinet, that does not include the cabinet, in accordance with the advice of any person or authority other than the cabinet. And I don't know, if you wrote to him, he therefore does have that power under Section 8. He has the discretion. And what are you asking him? You're asking him to use this power to do what? What is Project 40 saying?
Yeah, we're asking him to invite the two parties to mediation. You know, we're asking him to speak on the issue and to let not his own personal position on it, you know, but to invite the two parties to come to the table.
You think? Sorry, yeah, please go ahead.
I was saying, you know, in one of the meetings that I sat in, the only meeting I sat in with the government, Carson Charles basically said, yes, we asked for the report, for the Armstrong report, but we never agreed to abide by it. And that to me was it was a very weird statement, because how do you ask for something from a group of individuals who are highly qualified to do that?
Yes.
And then say, you know, there was discrepancies here, I found somebody who said something different, and therefore, because this person said something different, I'm going to follow them, I'm not going to follow you.
Well, that's what's so interesting, because the Prime Minister actually commissioned Dr. Armstrong, and he was an independent senator. He's highly qualified, and I believe there were 19 technocrats that came in, and they knew their thing, and they did up this page. It cost over $1 million. And you're asking a very interesting question, because I asked this question last week. Why commission a report, spend all this money, taxpayers' money, that you didn't intend to follow? Why do you think? I have my ideas as to why that is.
To buy time?
I don't know.
Okay, perhaps our friend Mohammed says to buy time, probably in the hope that it would say what you wanted it to say, and had no intention to. Or what do you think? We don't know.
It shows itself, the Armstrong report shows itself to be objective, because it doesn't necessarily fall into the camp of the HRM either.
No.
It doesn't.
Which is interesting. So
It doesn't.
You know, this is what we're trying to move toward, a more objective, you know, point of
The
view.
really nice thing about the Armstrong report is that it is so independent. It does take some time to read, because it is over 100 pages. And if you take your time, even just look at the recommendations, if you don't have the time for anything else, they agree with things, but they recommend. But are you therefore on the same page? And Project 40 is saying, we would like you to tell us why you're not abiding. Is that what you want to, or you want them to abide by it?
Well, we'd like them to, well, apart from abiding by it, let's go first.
Sure.
Yes, we want to know why. Gone are the days when you can simply say, hey, people of the land, this is what I'm doing, and you have to follow by that. No, listen, this generation has too much access to information.
Information, lots of information.
Too much. This is not 50 years ago. This is not even 20 years ago. This is now. And you can't, listen, you can't do that anymore. You can't do that anymore. I mean, even we're looking at universities, lecturers are becoming, I want to use the word irrelevant sometimes, because of now being able for us to go online and access information.
And access information
the seat of
online.
Power has shifted, and it has shifted from a position of the people who once had all the knowledge to now the people having the knowledge.
And being able to acquire it by the click of a mouse.
Yeah.
Brothers, we have got a caller on the line. Good evening, caller. Good evening, caller.
Good afternoon to Ms. Makila.
Good day,
Mr.
afternoon.
Mohammed. I can't remember the next guy in India.
Chike.
You all are talking very balanced, Mr. Mohammed. And you see what you said here, and I listened. The young people is the people of the future. And when all you're standing up, don't stand up for politics alone. Don't go on in ignorance. There is no solution. But
We need to hear your contribution there. What are you saying to us? That we must give a solution? Sorry, dear, you're saying that we must give a solution. Would you like us to discuss a solution? I'm not understanding.
You must not just come to criticize.
No, dear, we're not criticizing. We're not criticizing. Do you have a solution for us? Because we'll be very interested to hear. If you do, caller, we would be very interested to hear. I want to just make it very clear. Please don't feel at any time that we are here to criticize. This is not about a particular government. This is about an issue, and a wider issue, as my friends have said. Please don't take it personally. This is not against any particular government.
We also just we're getting into the issue.
We're getting into the issue. And don't feel offended there. This is about dialogue and speaking. Good evening, caller. But thank you for your call anyway. Good evening, caller.
Good evening, Ms. Pandey.
Good evening, sir.
Yes. First of all, last week I tried to get in. I want to compliment you. I think you have been asking some very pointed questions. As someone who has been following this matter for a long time, I have learned so much. The last time you referred to the question of 1 million tons of aggregate, and the pointed question, the way you are, of course I know you have your legal training, but you are directing the discussion in a particular way so that we as citizens will get an opportunity to understand the things. So I want to compliment you highly for the manner in which you have been conducting these interviews, particularly this matter, and I say to you, please go on, because I am getting a lot of assistance from the way you are not coming to your conclusions, you are pointing the questions, and as a citizen, I'm getting the answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. That's what we're trying to do, guys. When I invited you on here, and we're not here. We're here to give people the information. You'll have your points of views. I can have mine. All the callers will have their points of view. But what's most important is information, correct information, so that people can make their own decisions.
It's really not about any one party or the other. I mean, if anyone who knows anything were to take a survey of this generation, I mean, we are not invested in any one party or other. We have stood by and watched generation after generation do the same thing, which is the definition of madness, and expect a different result.
Yes,
we would like
yes.
Trinidad and Tobago to get to the point where we simply elect who is best for the job. So yes, 3 parties running for one place, but the COP person or the PNM person in this area, he is the best or she is the best person for the job. In another area, the UNC person is the best. And we elect along the lines of who is best suited for the job, not who is chosen by the party and we are told to elect, you know what I mean? And then, beyond that, we really exercise our right to democracy by following up on the person that we've elected and holding them to task to do what they said they've done.
And I want to get back, guys, to the office of the president, because I realized that when Dr. Kublal saying, and it's going to start having a trickling effect, when people feel so frustrated, they have to resort to hunger strikes to have their voices heard, 40-day fasts and things like that. You've written to the president. Now, like I say, we've seen that the president of the OWTU has written to the president asking him to deal with, for example, the oil spill. There was no response to that. But I want to ask you if you can shed some light for me, because now, like our first caller had said, we're trying to actually get some solutions. Yes. And I think you boys have done a fantastic job by taking the initiative to write to the president. Do you have any insight on, there was a stage in where President Anthony Carmona invited Dr. Kublal Singh to a meeting at the president's house. Do you know if anything had come out of that?
No, we don't know if anything came out of that. The thing is, in addition to what you're saying, we find it important to, which is why I like what the caller said, to combine criticism with praise. So, we come here and we're saying certain things, but we also want to recognize the contributions of all our leaders,
Of course, but we cannot water it down to suit people who may feel offended, because the reality is we're not in a good situation.
That's also true.
That is the reality. And those who have come before us, we thank them very much for their contribution. And we think, listen, you have set the foundation for us to build upon, but we seem to be a little bit stagnated.
The reality as well, though, Michaela, is when you travel to the Caribbean and you examine the states of the other islands and you examine where Trinidad is, we are in a good position, but we are losing our good position. We are in a really good position.
And it can happen very quickly.
We are in a really, really, really good position to set an example, not just for the region, but for the world at large.
But for the world at large, absolutely. I believe we have another call. Good evening, caller.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, dear.
Yes, I just want to say that I think that at this point in time, it is not about whether the highway should be built. I think that the highway should be built, but it has to do with the compensation of people, and especially the farming community in the area of Usilac. Because I think, and I heard a lot of campaigns while people who who lived in along that route, they were compensated. But I think those people who the highway when it passes through the agricultural lands, they are not getting a fair compensation because the valuation that is given by NITCO for agricultural land is extremely low.
Sure. Thank you, Dave.
Right? But
Thank you.
the thing about it is that South needs that highway. We need that connectivity.
Wonderful, and I'm glad,
And,
my dear.
I think that
Thank
is
you. Thank you. Now, I want you to keep viewing. Don't go and make a cup of tea or do anything. Week after week, and then I'm going to let my friends say this. Week after week, Dare, I have been saying to you, and I will let my friends say it to you, they are not against the highway. They are for the highway San Fernando, Point Fortin, to be built. That has never been in question, my dear, never, because we understand why it is important. I live in South, I totally understand. My dear, that's not the issue. The issue is a segment, small segment. There's actually a second highway being built, but this segment, Debe to Mondesir, which actually joins, I wish I had a sort of graph to show you, that joins the main highway. So you need to begin, first of all, my dear, by understanding that that is not the issue. These young men are not here for that. Dr. Kobal Singh is not against the highway. Please, 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 please understand that. I'd let you guys have a say on this.
What I'm saying too is that it could go to a bigger issue as well, though, with respect to the highway. The small segment is costing $5 billion, okay? That is just astronomical.
Out of the 7 billion, the tiny little
It's
bit
out
is
of this
costing 5,
world,
it is.
okay?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
let's be real with that. The other question is, does a highway solve my problems of getting from point A to point B? I wake up my neighbor wakes up at 5 a.m. in Arima to get to town in 3 hours for his 8 a.m. job. So is a highway really solving our problems? We have to ask different questions of ourselves.
And sort of, and that's wonderful, Chike, because sort of think out of the box. Yeah. To the caller, with regards to compensation, whether that boat has already sailed or not, my dear, that is an issue with NIPTEC. That is an issue that we'll take another day to discuss compensation. People who have been relocated are in temporary housing. They haven't received their checks. The housing that is being built hasn't gotten any certificate of clearance. All sorts of things. They don't have water, electricity, roads. The farmers are not going to be compensated. And I think it brings us back to what these young men are saying with regards to dialogue.
But you see, Makila, this is exactly the point, you know. Trinidadians and Seamen and Tobagonians, we always seem to boil back down, to me at least, to what the lesser issue is. If we fix the overarching issues, which is the way we treat each other, the way we govern, the way we deal with Trinidad and Tobago, these smaller issues, which aren't smaller, but these smaller issues, which are smaller than the larger overarching issue. I mean, for the last, as long as I have been alive, turning on TV every Monday morning is a scandal. And how can we hold the people in office to task for just these little things? I mean, honestly, as a Trinidadian, that whole issue with Annan Roberts and all these things that have been going on, not to call nobody's name, but their name out there, they made me personally feel ashamed to be a young Trinidadian, because now we're on the world stage. The appointment of the person who was in The Hague, I forget her name, who did the whole thing on the internet and everybody was laughing and making all these memes. It wasn't funny. It was funny, but it wasn't funny, because how do these things happen? How do they slip through the cracks, and how do we stop them from happening?
Perhaps let me ask you then, because why this program actually began was because Mr. Pandey, he started it, I kind of came on only recently, was he believes that there needs to be constitutional reform, true constitutional reform, not electoral reform of changing the system to runoff and all these kinds of things, but true constitutional reform. Tell me what you guys think about that.
Well, yes. The caller who called was right. You know, we shouldn't only talk about the issues. We should talk about the solutions. One of the things that we would like to call for, firstly, party finance. Right now, there's nothing that says that people need to declare where their finances are coming from. Therefore, we have people who are clearly giving things to these parties. We don't know what their interests are. We don't know who they are. And when they give this money, they're going to want something back in the end. Who are these people? Declare your finances. That's one of the first things. Where is your party getting its money from? If we do that, then immediately that takes away a very, 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 very large section of the problem, because the party now doesn't have any person to answer to who people don't know who they are. There's no shadows, you know what I mean?
And we can make changes within the Constitution to do that. I want to come back to that, but I think we have another call. Good evening, caller. Good evening, caller. Not sure if we lost that caller. Good evening, dear. Sorry about that, caller. Absolutely correct, absolutely correct. And we've begun, and that's true. It's about solutions. And you're saying, where do we go? I honestly, in my heart, and I didn't bite onto it initially, and then I thought there were so many issues that cannot be dealt with, scandals, all these sorts. That we need some changes in the Constitution that can deal with accountability in this country. I think we got back the caller. Good evening, caller. Good evening, caller.
Good evening, Sister Michaela.
Good evening. Oh, Tabakeet, you've come to be to enlighten us this evening. Looking forward.
Right. The brother there, Moakil, and the other brother from Project 40.
Yes.
Let me ask. I believe Project 40 is moving with Dr. Kublal Singh. To the brother in the khaki outfit, can you tell me whether or not, if in terms your father was working with HDC, and since he lost his job, that is why you're vouching for Project 40?
I'm a very no, I want you to answer. I want you to answer there. But I have to say something, and I'm going to fight you down on this. Do you know, Mr. Tabakeet, I want you the next time you call my dear friend to tell your name. Say your name. You're making.
No, I know he is.
We all do, but my dear listening public, they don't know.
Let me say this. This is really important to me. When I watched movies made about the massacre in Rwanda, one of the things that drove a lot of the discordance and the killings in that country was the Interhamwe radio. Anywhere that they went, there was a propaganda radio station that were telling people where other people were and that kind of stuff. I don't want to liken it to that, but there are people and there are stations in this country who have positioned themselves and aligned themselves, and frankly, and I want to look straight at the camera when I say this, you all are a past generation. We are a generation of love and peace and trying to actually promote a different Trinidadian and Tobagonian. My past, my father, whatever he did, these things have really, really no great consequence to me and what I believe we can achieve. So if that is where you want to take the conversation, maybe somewhere on the side.
And we tell you the radio station to call.
Maybe somewhere on the side, and in an era that is passing, you and I could sit down and have that conversation. But where you are speaking from right now, Mr. Tabakeet, is yesterday. You're speaking from yesterday. And we don't really have time to talk to yesterday. We're talking to tomorrow right now.
And Mr. Tabakeet,
with all due respect,
is calling and taking up good, valuable time when we could be talking about moving forward. Yeah. And Mr. Tabakeet, he does follow me around though. I was on a radio station and he called the other day giving me some incorrect information again. We want to be positive. We want to. You can absolutely, and ladies and gentlemen, please, let me tell you, you are entitled to disagree with everything that we're saying. You're entitled to have your own opinions, your own views, because we welcome that. Yeah. Anger, hatred, bitterness, and being the spokespeople for a little $20 it will not be allowed on this program. Good evening, caller. Good evening, dear.
Hi, good night.
Hi, dear.
Hi, I'm just calling to agree with everything that you all are saying. As a young person myself, when I travel every day, it's sad to see how the mentality of people, the way that they think, the ignorance of a lot of people, it's really, really sad,
Yes, dear. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just calling to agree with everything that you are saying, you guys. Good job.
Thank you.
I wish most people in Trinidad could think like that, because it's really, really sad. I'm a teacher myself, and people, I don't know, we need help.
You know,
Go on Facebook and like the page and see what we're about to.
yeah, come on, and you're good. Young people like yourself. Let me first of all also say congratulations for being a teacher. There are people who don't get enough praise in Trinidad and Tobago today. Thank you so much for your call.
No problem.
Thank you, dear. You know, one of these things, and I see it happening, and this is why these adverts are allowed to happen and calling people reptiles and all this. I mean, I would really like someone in the government, someone in the opposition, some politician that sits in the parliament to get up and say, listen, this is unacceptable. Do not treat any citizen of this country like that, regardless of color, creed, race, age, gender, political affiliation.
Well, you know, to be honest, I guess that's more issue of personal morality and whatever people choose. People are free to express themselves. I wouldn't even stop them from doing that. But what I would say is that...
But tell the truth.
Try to tell the truth. But even if you can't do that, let's try to have a higher morality. Let's try to expect more from ourselves. You know, Haile Selassie said that the leader is the one who raises the standard by which he judges himself, and by which he is willing to be judged, and therefore by which he judges himself. You understand?
Absolutely.
And if you could have that, the constant reason of a standard by which you judge yourself and which you will allow yourself to be judged, then you wouldn't have these issues. I mean, why call in to ask about if this...
And whose father? I get it quite often, and I say, listen, I'll bring him back onto the show and you can ask him everything you want.
Right. Because I think that's one of the issues too. We are stuck in the days of our forefathers.
I don't think that's so much as when you have nothing constructive or productive to say, you have to say something naughty. You have to say something hurtful. You have to say something to detract. There's nothing to do with forefathers. It has the fact that you cannot make an intellectual conversation, and we're spending too much time on him. I want to talk to you, JK.
Yeah, just to close that off, I just want to say that
yes,
we have turned our face in a very specific direction, and
good.
All of those things, we're not going to turn our face in the direction of that. We're not going to deal with those types of advances.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tell me something. You're asking for different sets of change. So I want to bring up a little issue that in the post, my cousin received on, well, it said the 8th of August, but we only got it in the post today. I want to tell you, it is from the office of the Prime Minister, so I'll just show you so that you know that we're not making things up. Basically what it is, it talks about, the Prime Minister says, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you the National Conversation, a program developed by the government to facilitate full citizen participation in mapping the way forward for the country. So she tells us about this, and then we have a little leaflet, nice little leaflet here, I don't know if you could see it, that has a few questions. For example, what will make Trinidad and Tobago a greater nation? What problem or issue do you think the government should focus on to improve people's lives? What problem or issue do you think the government should focus on to help develop and improve our nation over the next 10 years? I'd like to hear your a little bit late in the day, but I mean, I'd like to, just when we come back from a break, to just hear your views on this new initiative by the government. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to take a break. Please come join us in the next couple of minutes. Thank you.